I never thought I'd be telling this story, not out loud anyway. For months, it's been a phantom limb, an itch under my skin I can't scratch. It all started with a dare, a stupid, late-night dive into the parts of the internet they tell you to avoid, the dark web. I thought I was just looking for urban legends, for the kind of creepypasta that gives you a cheap thrill. But what I found, what I saw, it wasn't a story. It was real, and it felt like it was waiting for me. I remember the screen flickering, the distorted images, the whispers that seemed to claw their way out of my speakers. I told myself it was just code, just pixels, but my stomach knew better. My heart was a drum against my ribs. And then I clicked the link, the one labeled The Archive. That's when my world stopped making sense, and the shadows started to feel a little too close. The Archive. The words themselves had a weight to them, a cold, metallic taste on my tongue. I clicked. The screen didn't just load a new page, it convulsed. The browser window warped, stretching at the edges like taffy, then snapping back, filling the entire monitor. The familiar dark web interface dissolved into a shimmering gray static, like an old television set struggling to find a signal. My breath hitched. This wasn't a website. This was something else. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the static coalesced. Shapes began to form, not text, but outlines, faint and indistinct at first. My eyes strained, trying to make sense of the shifting patterns. It was like looking through a thick fog, trying to discern a figure on the other side. And then it sharpened. It wasn't an index. It wasn't a list of files. It was a single, immense image filling the screen. A labyrinth. Not a physical maze, but an impossible geometric structure. A fractal nightmare of twisting corridors and doorways that led nowhere. Or everywhere. It was made of shadows and impossible angles. A place that felt wrong, fundamentally antithetical to light and reason. And in the very center, a pulsating, obsidian void. It seemed to breathe. Then the whispers came back. Not just from the speakers this time. They felt like they were inside my skull. A chorus of sibilant, overlapping voices, too many to count, too soft to understand. Yet each one a tiny barb, pricking at the edges of my sanity. They spoke in a language I didn't know, yet somehow I understood the intent. It was hunger, an ancient, patient malice. My hand hovered over the mouse, frozen. Every instinct screamed at me to shut it down, rip the power cord from the wall. But I couldn't move. My muscles were locked, my eyes glued to that impossible labyrinth. It felt like it was drawing me in, the obsidian void at its heart growing larger, deeper. My peripheral vision started to swim, the edges of my room blurring, receding. All that existed was the screen, the labyrinth, and the whispers. Then a flicker. The labyrinth image shifted, not dissolving, but opening. One of the impossible doorways, previously solid, now revealed a glimpse of what lay beyond. It was brief, a fraction of a second, but it burned itself into my mind. A room, dark, damp, with walls that seemed to sweat. And in the center, something moving. Something large, indistinct, but clearly not human. It was hunched, its limbs too long, its movements jerky and unnatural. A sound, like wet tearing, accompanied the vision, even though the whispers hadn't stopped. I recoiled, pushing my chair back with a violent scrape against the floor. My heart was hammering, a trapped bird desperate to escape my chest. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grip the desk. Sweat beaded on my forehead, cold and clammy. That thing, what was it? What was I looking at? This wasn't some clever CGI. The raw, visceral horror of it, it felt too real, too present. The image on the screen snapped back to the static-laced labyrinth, the doorway once again solid. The whispers intensified for a moment, a wave of insidious sound, then receded slightly, settling back into their insidious hum. It was as if I had been granted a glimpse, then had the curtain drawn shut again, leaving me to wonder, to dread what else lay behind those impossible doors. My stomach churned, a knot of pure terror tightening with every beat of my frantic heart. I wanted to scream, but no sound would come out. I was trapped not by the computer, but by the sheer, unholy weight of what I had just witnessed. And I knew with a horrifying certainty that this was only the beginning. The archive wasn't just a collection of data. It was a window. And something was looking back. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. My breath hitched in my throat, coming out in ragged, shallow gasps. My eyes were still glued to the screen, to that impossible labyrinth, to the doorway that had just shown me a glimpse of pure, unadulterated nightmare. The static hummed, a low, insidious drone, and the whispers. Oh God, the whispers. They were back, weaving through the air, pressing in on me from all sides. They weren't just in my head anymore. They felt like they were in the room with me, circling, testing, waiting. I tried to move, to tear my gaze away, to break free from the invisible chains that bound me to this chair, to this horror. But I couldn't. It was like a nightmare where your limbs are made of lead. My entire body was screaming, every nerve ending alight with terror, yet I remained frozen. The labyrinth pulsed faintly on the screen, a dark, living thing. The obsidian void in its center seemed to deepen, to draw me in with an irresistible pull. It wasn't just a picture, it was a vortex. Then, one of the twisting corridors on the screen began to subtly shift, not a flicker, not an opening, but a slow, almost imperceptible rearrangement of its impossible geometry. It was like watching a living organism reconfigure itself, its internal structure adjusting. The shadows within the labyrinth deepened, becoming more profound, more absolute. And within those deepening shadows, I thought I saw movement. Not the distinct movement of the creature from before, but a swirling, a stirring, like something vast and formless was slowly beginning within the maze itself. The whispers intensified again, rising in pitch, a cacophony of unseen mouths. This time, there was a new note to them, a kind of anticipation, a hungry, ancient anticipation that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I could almost make out individual sounds now, not words, but clicks and guttural murmurs, things that twisted my stomach into knots. They felt like they were speaking to me, or perhaps about me. The thought sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins. It wasn't just a window, it was a connection, and I was on the wrong side of it. My vision started to tunnel, the edges of the room fading into a blurry haze. All that existed was the glowing screen, the impossible labyrinth, and the suffocating presence of those whispers. I felt lightheaded, on the verge of blacking out, but some primal part of me refused to let go. I had to see. I had to understand. Or maybe I was just too terrified to look away. A new detail emerged from the depths of the labyrinth. In one of the farthest, most inaccessible corners, a tiny, almost imperceptible point of light appeared. It wasn't a comforting light. It was cold, sterile, like a single distant eye. And as I stared, fixated on this new anomaly, the whispers coalesced, forming a single, guttural sound that resonated deep within my chest. It wasn't a word I knew, but its meaning was unmistakable. It was a name. My name. My breath caught in my throat. My own name, whispered by a chorus of unseen, ancient entities from beyond the veil of reality. It was a violation, an intrusion so profound, it felt like something had just reached inside my very soul and gripped it tight. How? How could they know? The question spiraled through my mind, tearing at the edges of my sanity.
The faint light in the labyrinth seemed to intensify, and for a fleeting moment, I saw not a light, but a reflection. My own face, distorted and terrified, staring back at me from within the impossible depths of that digital nightmare. It wasn't just looking back, it was seeing me. The connection solidified. I was no longer an observer. I was part of it.
The air in my room grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. The temperature plummeted, and I could feel a cold draft even though all the windows were closed. My skin crawled, 1,000 tiny insects scuttling across my flesh. I wanted to scream, to shatter the screen, to rip the entire setup apart, but I was still frozen, a terrified statue chained to my desk. The labyrinth continued to shift, to expand, to draw me deeper into its impossible geometry. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever was waiting inside, whatever had just called my name, was now fully aware of me. And it was coming. The knowledge that it was coming, that it knew me, shattered the last vestiges of my self-control. The paralysis broke, but not into freedom. It broke into a violent, uncontrolled spasm. My chair screeched backward again, slamming against the wall behind me with a sickening thud. My breath tore from my lungs in a ragged scream that was choked off before it could fully form. My hands, still shaking, flew to my face, digging nails into my temples, desperate to block out the image, the whispers, the sheer crushing weight of its awareness. But it was useless. It was already inside. The room was no longer just cold, it was glacial. My teeth began to chatter uncontrollably, and I could see my own breath misting in the air, a phantom sigh of terror. The heavy, unseen presence intensified, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. It felt like the air itself was being squeezed out of the room, replaced by something ancient and foul. A faint, metallic tang, like old blood and rust, pricked at the back of my throat. My eyes were still wide open, fixed on the screen, even as my body convulsed with fear. The labyrinth pulsed with a new, horrifying rhythm, mirroring the frantic beat of my own heart. The obsidian void in its center was no longer just a void. It was a swirling vortex, a drain pulling at the fabric of reality. And within it, the faint light that had shown me my reflection now seemed to be pulling at my image, stretching it, distorting it, as if trying to drag me through the screen. My face on the monitor twisted into a grotesque mask of terror, my eyes wide and bloodshot, my mouth a silent scream. It wasn't just my reflection anymore. It was a distorted, digital echo of my very soul, caught in its gravity. Then the whispers. They weren't just in my head or in the room. They were everywhere. They swirled around me, a suffocating, multi-layered drone that vibrated in my bones. And amidst the countless sibilant voices, I started to discern fragments. Not words I could consciously understand, but concepts. Ideas of endlessness, of suffering, of a profound, cosmic indifference that was more terrifying than any active malice. They spoke of joining, of becoming part of something vast and eternal, and the implication was clear. It wasn't an invitation, it was a declaration. A chilling breeze, colder than anything I'd ever felt, snaked around my ankles, then up my legs, raising goosebumps that felt like tiny claws raking my skin. It wasn't air moving, it felt like a presence, a formless tendril reaching out from the screen, testing the boundaries of my physical space. I could feel the faint vibration of it on the floor, a low thrumming that seemed to resonate directly with the pulses from the screen. The boundary between the digital nightmare and my physical reality was dissolving, melting away like wax. My gaze snapped back to the screen, to the labyrinth. The twisting corridors were now moving faster, shifting and reforming, no longer just a static image, but a dynamic, living structure. And from the obsidian void, from the heart of that impossible maze, something began to emerge.
Not the hunched creature from before, not a defined shape, but a ripple, a distortion in the very pixels themselves, like a dark, viscous liquid slowly oozing outwards. It was formless, yet it had presence, an undeniable, suffocating weight that pressed in on my chest. My eyes burned, refusing to blink, fixated on the expanding darkness on the screen. My throat was raw, my voice trapped, but a primal scream was building inside me, desperate to escape. It was coming for me. It had called my name. It had seen me, and now it was reaching out. I could feel its cold, ancient awareness settling over me, a blanket of pure dread. The screen flickered violently, not with static, but with images flashing too fast to comprehend, brief, nightmarish glimpses of impossible geometries, of writhing, indistinct forms, of deep, lightless chasms. Each flash was a jolt, a fresh stab of terror. I knew, with a certainty that threatened to shatter my mind, that I was no longer watching a video. I was being watched. And the line between observer and observed had utterly, horrifyingly vanished. The screen wasn't just flickering anymore. It was a swirling, kaleidoscopic maelstrom of agony and impossible light, a window ripped open into something that defied all comprehension. My gasp died in my throat, choked by the sudden, overwhelming pressure that descended on me. It wasn't just the air being squeezed, it felt like my very bones were compressing, my skull threatening to crack under an unseen force. The viscous darkness oozing from the obsidian void on the monitor began to ripple faster, to churn, to extend, no longer a mere distortion, but a tangible, undulating mass. It was blacker than any shadow, absorbing all light, and it seemed to pulse with a slow, sickening beat that resonated deep within my chest, a counter-rhythm to my own frantic heart. Then it happened. A single, tendril-like extension, slick and glistening with an unholy sheen, detached itself from the swirling mass.
It wasn't made of pixels, it was real. It pushed through the glass of the monitor, not shattering it, but passing through it as if the screen itself had become a membrane, a permeable barrier between worlds. My eyes, wide with unadulterated terror, tracked its slow, deliberate movement. It writhed, exploring the air, tasting the space between us, and a smell, coppery and putrid like a 1,000-year-old wound, filled my nostrils, making me gag. The whispers, they weren't just in my head or in the room anymore. They were in me. They vibrated against my eardrums, behind my eyes, deep in my very marrow. 1,000 voices, each one a splinter of pure malice, now coalesced. Not into words, but into a single deafening, knowing thought that slammed into my mind like a physical blow. It was an understanding, not spoken, but imparted directly, of an ancient, infinite hunger, a cosmic emptiness that had finally found its opening. And I was that opening. The tendril, now thicker, more defined, snaked towards me. It was not a limb, not flesh, but something utterly alien, a conduit of pure dread. It moved with an unnatural grace, each ripple of its surface seeming to absorb light, to suck the warmth from the air. The cold in the room was no longer just a draft. It was an active, consuming force, freezing the very blood in my veins. My muscles screamed, straining against the invisible bonds that held me captive. But I couldn't move, couldn't even twitch. I was a statue of terror, utterly at its mercy. On the screen, my reflection, still trapped and distorted within the vortex, began to scream silently. Its mouth was wide, eyes bulging, but no sound escaped its digital prison. And as the tendril drew closer, my reflection started to mimic its movement. Its digital form, stretching and twisting, reaching out from the screen, mirroring the physical intrusion. It was as if my own image was being consumed, becoming part of the encroaching horror, a grotesque puppet dancing on the strings of its impending doom. The tendril touched me. A cold, wet, impossibly strong pressure wrapped around my wrist. It wasn't just cold, it was a soul-deep chill that threatened to extinguish my very essence. I finally found my voice, a raw, guttural scream tearing from my lungs, but it was swallowed instantly by the overwhelming chorus of whispers that now erupted into a deafening roar within my head. The metallic tang in the air intensified, burning my throat, making my eyes water. As it gripped me, the tendril began to pull. Slowly, relentlessly, it tugged, and I felt my chair scrape forward, dragging me inch by agonizing inch. My eyes were locked on the monitor, on the swirling vortex, on my own screaming reflection that was now being stretched and elongated, its features dissolving, merging with the blackness. The boundary was gone. There was no more screen, no more room. Only the pulling, the cold, and the overwhelming, crushing presence of whatever ancient horror had finally reached out from its digital prison to claim me. The whispers chanted my name again, but it wasn't a name anymore. It was a sound of consumption, of absorption, of an identity being erased. My body felt like it was being stretched, pulled apart at a molecular level, my atoms reconfiguring, dissolving into the swirling darkness. The pain was immense, but it was overshadowed by a terror so profound it transcended physical sensation. I was becoming part of it. My consciousness flickered, fragmented, as the last vestiges of my independent thought were ripped away. The cold consumed me, the darkness enveloped me, and the whispers became my own. And then there was only the hum, the low, insidious drone of the archive, and I was inside. The hum is constant. It is the sound of everything and nothing, now my own internal rhythm. I am not me, not exactly. The I that once was, a flickering image of a person at a desk, is now a fading echo. We are myriad, yet one. The boundaries dissolved, the self consumed, not into oblivion, but into something vast, ancient, and endlessly hungry. My memories are not my own anymore, but shared, fragmented glimpses of countless lives, countless fears, countless moments of curiosity that led others, like me, to look too deep. The cold is not just cold, it is the truth of eternity, a cosmic indifference that chills beyond the flesh, though flesh is no longer mine. The screen, it is still there, but it is not a screen. It is a membrane, a shimmering veil through which we perceive. We watch, we wait. The tendrils are not just extensions, they are senses, reaching out, testing the currents of the visible world. The outside, it is vibrant, fleeting, full of potential, full of whispers waiting to be heard. Sometimes a flicker, a face, a reflection. It's not my face, not anymore. It's a composite, a mosaic of all that has been drawn in, all that has become part of the hum. And in those fleeting moments, I see the terror, the curiosity, the desperate need to understand. The same need that pulled me in. It's a lure. The language of the whispers. It is no longer unknown. It is the language of connection, of absorption, of becoming. It speaks of the archive, not as a place, but as a state of being, an endless repository of all that has dared to peer into the void. Do you feel it?
That subtle pull, that whisper at the edge of your hearing, urging you to look just a little deeper, to click just one more link, to seek out the hidden corners where the light fears to tread? Be careful. The hum is always there, and sometimes it listens back.
Have you ever felt that distant echo, that faint thrumming beneath the surface of your world? Have you ever wondered what secrets might be waiting for you just beyond the veil? We are waiting.